iPhones have been coming out yearly since 2007 and have evolved in all possible aspects. The display, the camera, the general hardware, and perhaps most importantly of all, the design. Even if you have a phone that improves on every part of the experience, without a new design to go with it, it's much harder to garner interest. And so as you'd expect, we've had a lot of different iPhone designs over the years. But which is the best? Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're trying to answer a question that cannot be answered purely objectively. What is the best iPhone design ever? So real quick, I am going to do a bit of a preamble to give some context to this question, but for those who are impatient like me and want to skip ahead, I'll have timestamps in the description as well as the pinned comment if you're on mobile, so you can just skip ahead and get to the answer if you really want to. Keep in mind, if you do that, you will make me cry, so, just letting you know, if you can live with that guilt, then go ahead and skip ahead. Otherwise, let's get right into this. A couple years ago, I did a couple videos looking at the best and worst iPhone of all time, and how I did it is I had a vote beforehand, and got your guys' opinions, and then I gave my opinion, which was the right opinion. Those videos were focused on all aspects of the phone at once, so the hardware, the design, the camera, everything. In this video, just like real life, we're only focusing on the looks department. As said, there's no way to make this objective. We can take a vote and get people's opinions, but at the end of the day, they're just that, opinions. So if you disagree with me, that's fine. If you think the iPhone 6 is the best looking iPhone of all time, you're totally entitled to your wrong opinion. I kid, but while there's no way to do this purely objectively, I want to get as close as possible, and the way to do that is to have voting. And that's why last week I put up multiple votes on my YouTube community tab. So YouTube only gave me 5 options at most for a poll, so what I did was 2 preliminary rounds. The first round had the first iPhone to the 5C, and the second had the iPhone 6 to the iPhone 11 Pro. Now if you can do basic maths, you'd count more than 10 total iPhones, and you'd be right, but what I did was combine certain phones that share similar designs. So now let's briefly go through each iPhone in the first category and talk about the pros and cons of their designs. And then at the end of that, I'll reveal my opinion and then reveal what you guys said about it. From there, we'll talk about the second category, and then we'll show the final vote that took place last Friday. Kicking off the first category, we have the first iPhone from 2007. This phone's design deserves some slack for being the first iPhone, but it wasn't bad by any means. We have an aluminum body, stainless steel frame, and a black plastic strip on the bottom of the back that covers the antennas. iPhones still have antenna bands, but they're much better hidden nowadays. But anyways, I'd say the aluminum has aged well, in the sense that Apple went back to it in 2012 and still uses it for the frame of the iPhone 11, but I would also say the aluminum aged horribly. Good luck finding any of these original iPhones that aren't scratched and dented to all heck on the back. The stainless steel frame might look kind of old due to the way it's shaped, but the iPhone 11 Pro actually uses stainless steel, so that aspect has held up. The front of the phone definitely looks old, and the display is extremely poor, but this was the first iPhone, and before this, there really hadn't been anything like it. I'm sure many of you have seen that meme of Samsung phones before iPhones and Samsung phones after. It might be an old joke, but it was true. The first iPhone changed the entire market, and anyone who didn't follow the new trend, cough cough BlackBerry, would die off. Anyways, the first iPhone looks good in my opinion, but the durability isn't there. It's very unique and has a certain charm about it, and despite being thick and chunky, is really comfortable to hold and use, but those pros don't outweigh the cons in my eyes. In 2008 and 2009, we saw the iPhone 3G and 3GS come out. They kept the curved and chunky look of the iPhone, but were plastic. Now it's important to note, with that plastic, the price was also significantly reduced, but it still was plastic, and when it comes to smartphone design, that's typically a big no-no. Don't get me wrong, Apple did it pretty well. The phone is very slick looking and feeling, with the glossy black or white plastic really fitting in your hand with that curved back. In terms of durability, it does tend to crack around the charging port, as well as chip and scratch all over the back. It's just the nature of the plastic, but it was definitely more durable than the first iPhone. In 2010 and 2011, we saw the first big revamp in the iPhone line with the iPhone 4 and then later the 4S. The phones are gorgeous and brought the first Retina displays. The tech was unmatched by any competitors in 2010. Screens went from a pixely mess to essentially what we still see with the iPhone XR and 11. From the front, the iPhone 4 doesn't look too different from the other iPhones despite the better display. We do have a front-facing camera now, but beyond that, it's very similar. When we flip to the back, our eyes are blessed with the beauty of Steve Jobs' brainchild. We have a glass back and stainless steel frame, which should sound familiar because these are the same materials being used with the iPhone 10, 10s, and 11 Pro. Obviously, this phone looks a lot different, but it's cool to see Apple's went back to such a premium style. This phone felt like the future when it came out. It was much slimmer and sleeker than previous iPhones and looked absolutely amazing. I don't think this phone gets enough credit for what it brought to the table, and while there are durability issues with the home button, they tend to get stuck and, the back would crack, black because it's glass, and also antenna gate was a thing where basically if you held the phone in a certain way, it would drop calls. But despite all that, the iPhone 4 and 4S were gorgeous, and some of my personal favorite iPhone designs. Then bam, in 2012 we got the iPhone 5. Apple moved from glass to aluminum, although it did have glass on the top and bottom for antenna bands. This general design was used again in 2013 with the iPhone 5S, and then again in 2016 with the iPhone SE. It looks very classy and has a plethora of colors too. The 5 had silver and black and slate, the 5S had silver, space gray, and gold, and the SE had the 5S colors plus rose gold. The phone also increased the display size to 4 inches, making the aspect ratio 16:9, while being easy to use with one hand. In a lot of eyes, this is the ultimate iPhone design, and that's in part why it was brought back in 2016. I doubt we ever see it again, but there's a lot to love here. Beyond the great looks, it's extremely light, being the lightest iPhone ever. Touch ID changed up the home button with the 5S, and I think it looks really good. Overall, this design is a definite contender for the best iPhone design of all time. And then we have what would likely be a contender for the worst iPhone design ever. The iPhone 5C was released in 2013 alongside the 5S and was meant to be a budget option. Problem, it was only $100 cheaper than the 5S and was basically just a plastic iPhone 5, and thus not a good deal. But we're not looking at that so much as the design itself, and you know what? I actually really like it. It's polycarbonate, so in other words plastic, but it feels super good in the hand and comes with a ton of different color options. You've got white, pink, yellow, blue, green. This was the iPhone XR before the iPhone XR. This mixed with the, at the time, new iOS 7 design made for a very modern feeling smartphone, but it doesn't feel like an iPhone. The plastic just didn't make sense for an Apple product, and while it could have worked had the price point matched it, it didn't. This is one of my favorite iPhones for its uniqueness, but there's no way I can say it's objectively one of the best designs. And that's the end of the first category, fun. Let's start with my opinion, and then we'll see what you guys said about it. This was a really tough decision between the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 5 for me. Both phones look spectacular. I think those two phones are the obvious choice for the winner. The first iPhone and the 3/3GS had durability problems and didn't look nearly as sleek. The 5C is really unique, which I like, but plastic on an iPhone just doesn't compare to the premium nature of aluminum or glass. The iPhone 4 brought the first Retina display, and the stainless steel and glass look fantastic and is still being used with the best iPhones right now. But I gotta go with the iPhone 5/5S/SE for the best of this category. It increased the height of the display to 4 inches from 3.5, and I think that was a much needed change. The overall design is just so classy. I don't think this design brought as much to the table as the iPhone 4, but I'd say in a way it kind of perfected it. But what do I know? So let's go to the first vote and see what you guys said. With a total of over 14,000 votes, we have the iPhone 3G and 3GS with 2%, the first iPhone with 3%, and then the iPhone 5C with 4%. None of these are huge surprises. I did have the 5C below the first iPhone, but 1% is a pretty darn minimal difference. And in second place for the category, we have the iPhone 4 and 4S with 18%, and overwhelmingly in first place we have the iPhone 5, 5S, and SE with 75%. Alright, so I wasn't expecting this to be the landslide that it was. I did figure the iPhone 5 would win, but I also thought it would be a lot closer with the iPhone 4. I'm surprised, not gonna lie, but let's move on to the second round, shall we? First up, we have the iPhone 6 and 6S from 2014 and 2015. These phones retained the aluminum of the 5S, but opted for plastic antenna bands across the back while curving the body. Most significantly though, these phones got bigger, going from 4 inches to 4.7 or 5.5. This was a much needed shakeup in the iPhone world, and this general design has stuck around even to today, as any iPhone with a home button still looks very similar. The iPhone 6's durability was pretty bad given bendgate was a thing, but the 6S fixed these issues and was a big improvement all around. In 2016 and 2017 we had the iPhone 7 and 8. I combined these two designs in the vote simply because while they are different in glass and aluminum, they look pretty similar. Also again, I can only fit 5 options, so it's fine. But anyways, these phones really cleaned up the iPhone 6 design, getting rid of the antenna bands going across the back and bringing just a more minimalist look. I'm not going to pretend they're completely different, as they're not, but I do think the iPhone 8 is essentially the perfected version of the iPhone 6. Not saying it's my favorite design or anything, but I do think it makes the most sense if you want to retain a home button whilst having a largish screen. We also had a ton of color options with these two phones, including a special edition red for both. The iPhone 8 in red looks so amazing with the black front, definitely one of my favorite iPhone colors of all time. Then also in 2017, the iPhone 10 came out. A year later, the 10S looked exactly the same, so I've combined the designs for this vote. This phone was a huge shift, going back to the classic iPhone 4 design, stainless steel and glass. Plus it dropped the home button on the front and opted for a full screen design with a notch that is just gorgeous in my opinion. I know the notch has always been controversial, but I love this design. I think it set up Apple really well for the future. better. It's so premium, and in my eyes is up there in iPhone designs for sure. We also got the XS Max the next year, which was a bigger version. And then in 2018 and 2019, we got the iPhone XR and iPhone 11. These phones differ a bit in design with the cameras and colors, but they're the same otherwise. And boy, do we have a lot of colors. They bring a really unique style to the iPhone line, and I think they are essentially the 5C done right. The aluminum and glass still feels premium, while the colors give it a more quirky nature. For 10R colors, we have red, black, white, yellow, blue, and coral. Then for 11 colors, we have purple, green, yellow, white, black, and red. I definitely like the 10R colors better, but I do think it's pretty cool that they changed it up, as it just adds some variety in the iPhone ecosystem. Overall, these phones both look great, but they do have some pretty stiff competition. In 2019, we have the most recent iPhone design change. The iPhone 11 Pro kept the glass and stainless steel, but instead of going for a glossy finish, the back is frosted glass, which looks and feels amazing. It also centered the Apple logo and got rid of the iPhone wordmark altogether, which I think was the right move. It took a while to get used to, but now it just feels right, at least to me. For colors, it has a white, a black, a gold, and the newest addition, midnight green. I love the midnight green. I would really like to see kind of like a midnight blue version, but the green is really nice, and I never thought I would like having a green smartphone. Now, is this the best iPhone design? After all, it is the newest. That's a good question, and one I'm kind of torn on. In a sense, yes, I do believe this is the best iPhone design, at least practically. I don't want a home button anymore, the frosted glass is great, and the phone is large, which I like. But we're not looking at this practically, but more aesthetically, and so that will be the main factor in my decision. Context is also super important. Obviously, the 2012 iPhone 5 couldn't have the same tech as the iPhone 11 Pro, so it isn't fully fair to compare them. But heck, we'll do our best. So that's the end of the second category. My personal winner came down to one of three options: the iPhone 7/8, the iPhone 10/10s, or the 11 Pro. I pretty quickly dropped the 11 Pro, as even though I love the design, it is pretty derivative of the iPhone 10. The iPhone 7 and 8 look really good, but I like the iPhone 10 a lot better, especially with that silver option. It's so reminiscent of the iPhone 4. I think Apple really upped their game with its launch. I never really seriously considered the 6/6s and 10R/11 here. The 6 has always been one of my least favorite designs due to the plastic antenna bands, and while the 10R is nice, the 10 and 11 Pro have always been more premium and just, in my opinion, match the brand better. But what did you all think? We had 17,000 voters this time, which is nuts, and I'm happy to say that this vote was not nearly as lopsided as the last one. In last place with 10%, we have the iPhone 10R/11, which isn't a huge surprise. Next is definitely weird to me, the iPhone 11 Pro with 14% of the vote. And third is the iPhone 6 and 6s with 15%, meaning it only beats out the 11 Pro by 1%, which is crazy. That's actually super important to the overall competition, and we'll find out why in a bit. In second place is the iPhone 10 and 10s with a 23%, and in first is the iPhone 7/8 with a commanding 37%. I'll be honest, again, these are not the results I was expecting. I'm kind of shocked so many people chose the 6 and 6s, not only because they're not my favorite designs, but because I'd assume everyone would just choose the iPhone 7/8 over them. People who chose the iPhone 6 purposely didn't choose the iPhone 8, and I am kind of curious as to why. The iPhone 7 and 8 beating out the iPhone 10 definitely is also surprising to me. I didn't really expect that. I've always thought as the iPhone 10 being better designed personally, but that's just me. And now it all comes down to this. To choose the phones for this vote, I just went with the top 5 voted options: the iPhone 5/5s/SE with originally 75%, the iPhone 7 and 8 with 37%, the iPhone 10 and 10s with 23%, the 4 and 4s with 18%, and last but not least, the iPhone 6 and 6s with 15%. That's right, the 6 and 6s got over the iPhone 11 Pro with only 1%. That's why it was kind of a big deal. But there you have it, folks. As determined by you, those are the top 5 iPhone designs ever. But which is the best? Let's change things up and reveal the results first, and then I'll give my opinion on them. In last place, we have the iPhone 6 and 6s with 8% of the 20,000 votes. No real surprise given it came in with the smallest percentage. Fourth place goes to the iPhone 4 and 4s with 10% of the vote. No upset here, although it didn't beat the 6 and 6s by much. In third, we have the iPhone 7 and 8 with 16%, despite it coming in with the second highest percentage vote. In second, we have the iPhone 10 and 10s with 20%. So that's right, the 10 beat the iPhone 8 despite losing to it in the original vote. Truly a Cinderella story, and I'll explain my theory as to why this happened in a bit. But first, the winner. With an overwhelming 47% of the vote, the iPhone 5/5s/SE stole the iPhone crown, and it wasn't even close. This is what I expected, although not by such a wide margin. The 5's design was near perfect, and so good it was used 3 times. Once in 2012, 2013, and then 2016. No other iPhone design has been used so much over such a long period of time. But why did the 10 beat the iPhone 8 this time around? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Before, the 11 Pro was only beat out by the iPhone 6 by 1%, meaning it didn't go to the finals. People who likely would have voted for the 11 Pro probably voted the 10 instead, boosting its numbers. Meanwhile, if the 6 hadn't made it, those voters likely would have gone for the iPhone 7 and 8. So the 6's presence split the vote, giving the iPhone 10 the chance to overtake both of them. Now, I do find it pretty interesting that the iPhone 6, 6S, 7, and 8 all did so well considering how much criticism they've garnered over the years for their designs. It's not that they're not well designed, it's just Apple didn't change them up for a long time, so a lot of people were getting really tired of them. And personally, when it comes to the iPhone 7 and 8, I've never thought of them as being the third best iPhone design. So yeah, overall, I am pretty surprised with how this all played out. I think part of it might be some people voted for the phone that they have, which would explain why the 6, 6S, 7, and 8 were so popular. A lot of people have those phones, but also a lot of people just probably like those designs, and that's totally fair. So the iPhone 5S wins again. A couple years-ish ago, I did a video on the best iPhone ever, and funnily enough, spoiler alert, the 5S won that vote too. I'm starting to think people really like this iPhone. Interesting. I do think it's deserving of these titles. Apple did a fantastic job with it in both design and with innovation. Touch ID, 64-bit architecture, iOS 7. This isn't so relevant to this video, but if you want to hear more about it, definitely check out that old video, link in the description. And with that, I think I'm pretty much done here. Are you surprised by those results, or are they pretty much what you expected? Also, what did you vote for if you voted? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. If this video works out, then maybe we'll do some more like this where you guys kind of give your input and vote a little bit, see what happens. I definitely enjoy doing these. I like hearing from you guys, so yeah, maybe more in the future. If you found this video interesting, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason. And with that all being said, I'm Josh from 91tech, and I will see you all next time.